Vice Admiral Allen, in order to ensure Congress is able to carry out its oversight functions, we require you to provide a yearly capital investment plan, a biannual report on major acquisitions, and a quarterly acquisition brief. You have never provided this committee with a major acquisition report. You have not provided a capital investment plan since FY23, and even that was a year late, sir. And we have not received an acquisition brief since Q3 of last year. Given the challenges with the Coast Guard's acquisition efforts, why does the Coast Guard refuse to follow the law and produce information that you are required to provide for us?
Sir, thank you for the question, and we need to get better. Three things I'll promise to you today.
Okay.
We will deliver the capital investment plan to you 60 days after the President's budget is delivered to the Hill. The second thing we'll do is before April 1st, I will ensure that your staff gets a quarterly acquisitions brief. We're streamlining that brief to provide it in a more succinct manner, but to answer all your questions because we see you as a very important part of us being able to move forward. And then third, we are working on an aviation strategy that you also asked us to do, and we commit that we will get that to you before the end of April in a brief to make sure you understand where we are in our aviation strategy and where we're going.
Howdy, y'all. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. What we have here is a channel to communicate. I want you folks to be thinking by the time you leave my videos. Why? Because I'm tired of people talking via what other people tell them to think. So, watch my video and enjoy the chance to think for yourself. So, I started out this video with you hearing from a congressional hearing. You heard what the congressman was saying. You heard the response from the Coast Guard Admiral. Here's the thing. For the past few years, the Coast Guard has been headed up by someone who was more focused on evasion and DEI priorities than they were anything else. This next video that I'm going to show you is a CBS News report talking about the Coast Guard, and notice how most of this video is taken up with the fact that A, the former head of the Coast Guard was a female, and the other thing is most of it's taken up with, hey, this is all, well, why are they cutting DEI, yada, yada, yada. And then we're going to get into further into why this has hurt the Coast Guard, who, by the way, is an exceedingly important part of protecting this nation. Exceedingly important part of protecting this nation. Also, if you want to hear more about government corruption, seeing what's out there, finding out the truth, hit like, hit subscribe, and here we go.
The Trump administration on Tuesday fired U.S. Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Linda Fagan. Former President Biden nominated Fagan for the role in 2022, and the Senate confirmed her by a unanimous vote. Fagan was the first woman to lead a branch of the U.S. military, and she had 2 years left in her term. A senior Homeland Security official cited multiple factors in the decision to fire her, including failure to address border security threats, inadequate leadership in recruitment and retention, and excessive focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie Daggett joins us now. Charlie, who is Linda Fagan, and what were some of her priorities as Coast Guard Commandant?
Well, I mean, her primary job was heading up 57,000 personnel. It's actually a component of the Department of Homeland Security, so technically not under the auspices of this building. As you mentioned, that's a 4-year term. She'd only served 2 of those. Many people believe she was instrumental in turning around the Coast Guard's recruitment issues, increasing recruitment, and that goes against the services as a whole. Those responsibilities include maritime border security, crisis response, protection of critical infrastructure, even cybersecurity. So very much part of the efforts to protect U.S. maritime borders. And, as the president declares an emergency, the Coast Guard is very much front and center in the administration's efforts to defend against illegal immigration. In fact, just today, the Coast Guard acting commandant, who was the second in command, said he's surging Coast Guard assets and personnel to deter and detect illegal immigration. In support of those executive orders, he name-checked Florida to prevent migrants from Haiti and Cuba, saying the agency is going to focus the maritime border between Texas and Mexico and the Gulf of America, his words.
Let's talk about the president's efforts to remove DEI from every facet of federal government. We saw that in a memorandum today as of 5 p.m. This evening. We know that many federal DEI employees were put on leave. How will those efforts impact the Pentagon?
Lindsay, that's a great question. I wish I had a better answer for. I've been asking around, like many things in this building, it's complicated. So technically, I've been told there are no dedicated, which is to say named DEI personnel in the DOD. So as far as I'm aware, no personnel have been sent home on paid leave, as has been instructed across the federal government. What had been the DEI has been folded into the Office of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity. I did know that. At the same time, there have been DEI efforts in the past. It's been pointed out by vocal critics, including obviously some within the Trump administration. And in the last National Defense Authorization Act, the budget for 2024, around $85 million were allocated for DEIA initiatives. So like everywhere else, I think they're just trying to figure out what this means to DOD and its personnel going forward.
All right, Charlie Daggett, appreciate you. Thank you.
So you heard what the Coast Guard had been paying attention to. CBS News, is a liberal news source. You heard, hey, let's not talk about what's going on with the Coast Guard. No, let's talk about the fact that Trump got rid of a DEI hire, somebody who, as you heard in the first question and answer part, of how that was hurting the Coast Guard. So, this next part that we're going to get into is a question and answer with what was going on behind the scenes and the GAO, and I'll let you hear it.
Ms. McLeod, the Coast Guard is confronting a costly backlog of shore infrastructure projects. GAO recently updated its findings to reflect that the backlog is $7 billion, and nearly half of the Coast Guard's shore infrastructure is beyond its life service. This backlog is exacerbated by a lack of budget transparency. Can you detail your main takeaways and recommendations following GAO's study on shoreside infrastructure?
Certainly, thank you. So the Coast Guard recently took steps to address one of our recommendations, for example, by acquiring a modeling system that will help them assess the costs. And so that is one tool that once it has the information in it, we'll be following up with them to make sure that they're using that modeling tool to make the decisions and trade-offs. Another aspect is, a lot of the projects that we're talking about in terms of shore infrastructure have not been updated since their original estimates, nor have they been adjusted for inflation. And so we suspect the backlog is actually much higher, and better information related to the actual cost of the backlog is something we'd like to see from the Coast Guard.
Now, you heard that question. Now, there was an opening statement by the congressman in all of this. He's the head of this subcommittee. I want you to pay attention to what he is saying in this opening statement. Yeah, it's a little bit long, but you'll notice that he's not talking about not funding. They know that there needs to be some funding applied correctly. You've heard where they're not keeping up with what needs to happen. you've heard all this, so you're going to hear a lot more of the complete picture of what this former head of the Coast Guard did. She's not even worth talking about, but this is what she's done to the Coast Guard. So let's get into that.
Today, the subcommittee meets for our latest hearing in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee's America Bills series to review the Coast Guard's modernization efforts. I'd like to welcome our witnesses, Vice Admiral Tom Allen, Acting Deputy Commandant for Operations, and Heather McLeod, Director of Justice and Homeland Security Programs at the U.S. Government Accountability Office, who is accompanied by Shelby Oakley, Director of Contracting and National Security Acquisitions at the United States Government Accountability Office. That was a mouthful. Thank you all for being here today. Every day, the Coast Guard is called upon to save lives, respond to emergencies, protect the environment, enforce our laws, secure the maritime border from drugs and illegal immigrants, and maintain the flow of maritime commerce. The brave sentinels who carry out these missions should be supported by reliable ships, helicopters, and airplanes, but instead members of the Coast Guard at times find themselves on vessels and air assets that should have been retired long ago. The Coast Guard's ability to do more with less has unfortunately encouraged years of underinvestment and ever-increasing mission demands that have pushed the service to the breaking point. Today, the Coast Guard faces a $7 billion shoreside infrastructure backlog with barracks, hangars, and docks that are literally crumbling, leaking, or both. The service's medium-endurance cutters are increasingly unable to carry out their missions. Our icebreaker fleet is unable to project our nation's sovereignty in the Arctic, and flight mechanics are performing miracles to keep the Coast Guard's aging aviation assets in the air. While the Coast Guard is well into a multi-decade modernization plan that has seen fast response cutters and national security cutters come online, progress on other programs remain dangerously behind schedule. Since the subcommittee last examined the Coast Guard's modernization efforts in June, the Polar Security Cutter program continues to crawl forward, but we need to continue to see meaningful progress. The subcommittee is encouraged by the Coast Guard's past statements highlighting the importance of the acquisition, and we expect you to continue to prioritize this critical program. Concerns with the Offshore Patrol Cutter program remain as we prepare for the lead ship to be delivered at the end of this year, 4 years late, and with a host of non-compliant parts. In addition, new problems have developed with the last hulls in the National Security Cutter program, and we could receive one ship less than what Congress has appropriated. At the same time, efforts to modernize the service's aviation fleet have taken steps back, with MH-60 and C-27s being phased out earlier than planned. Failure to successfully acquire new surface and air assets and the shore infrastructure required to support them is a true crisis for the Coast Guard. Without them, the service cannot carry out its missions. The failure to appropriate adequate funds year after year is a significant factor contributing to this problem, but it's not the only one. Broken contracting process and inadequate planning and review efforts have dug the Coast Guard deeper into the hole. To encourage proper oversight, Congress requires yearly capital investment plans and major acquisition reports. These plans are not optional. They are required by law. Yet the Coast Guard fails to produce them, and this is unacceptable. As chairman of this subcommittee, I am committed to reviewing the Coast Guard's contracting and planning efforts and working with the service to improve them. I also applaud the President for a strong vision in helping our shipbuilding industry back on track. In his speech last night, he set a clear leadership vision for investing in American shipyards through the establishment of a shipbuilding office to strengthen our domestic capacity, our local economy, and local workforce. Vice Admiral Allen, I am eager to hear your plan to right the ship so that we can get the men and women of the Coast Guard the assets they need to carry out their missions. Director McLeod and Ms. Oakley, I look forward to you both bringing a dose of reality to the Coast Guard's plans. Thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to our discussion.
as someone that earned his Eagle Globe and Anchor, I will make fun of toasties on occasion. But here's the thing. They're vital for our national security. Even before 9/11, they were vital. They were keeping out drug shipments. They were keeping away folks that we didn't want in this country, even before 2001. They have been a vital part of our national security for its entire time. Not to mention, they save lives. They may be for national security. They may project our power in places like the Arctic Circle, but they also need this so they can go out to save lives. That's what they started out by doing. They started out by going out to save lives of people who were having, shipwrecked or had gone too far out. That was their first job. It's evolved to the point now that there's World War II, their one and only Medal of Honor winner. He put his boat in between Marines and Japanese and lost his life protecting Marines. As a Marine, I have total respect for that. What has been done to the Coast Guard the past few years is pathetic. And for that matter, somebody needs to answer the question as to what was going on even during Trump's administration the first time around, and Obama's administration, and Bush's administration, because these are things that have been building up. And I understand that the first Trump administration, that there were people that were not telling him everything that should have been going on, which is the truth. I am not defending him. I am not attacking him. What I am saying is there needs to be found the people that were doing that during his administration, along with Biden. Well, we already got rid of the person doing it in Biden's administration. We need to get a full look, because all of this backlog did not just happen in the past few years. This has been building up over many decades. You know it's truth. And now this is putting people's lives at risk. It's causing a lot of problems, and we're going to have to pay for it. But hey, this has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye. So folks, that's the story that I wanted to bring you on this video. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming by. Hit like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff if you don't mind. Help me out. So, y'all have a good day now. Bye.